with this character, he doesn't have to worry about the adulting tasks in a city like Mumbai.
He's trying to make it as an actor, but he is almost like performing a role in every situation.
Looking at vulnerability as almost a sign of weakness, giving his own information away because he himself is cashing in on the information.
Yeah, Vikram knows everything that people need to hear, but it's serving him. And in the case of empathy, you kind of have to like meet people as they are. Wouldn't you do this? Like there is that justifiable thing of like, wouldn't you also do this?
The best of cinema is like that, like which is a quiet exploration, which makes us put ourselves in the shoes of the character. Luck by chance, Vikram Jaisingh. Karan, every kid growing up in the 90s India had one of these two dreams, I think. Every boy, rather. Either he wanted to be a cricketer, play for the Indian cricket team, or he wanted to come to Bollywood and be a movie star. Not an actor, a movie star. Vikram Jaisingh, as we find him into this world, is an embodiment of that dream in many ways, right? He's come from wherever he's come from. He's an outsider into this maximum city, and he's wanting to make it in this world as a movie star. So yeah, tell us, how do you find him?
I find him to be like a damning indictment of how much it takes to make it.
All right.
Like, I think that's what bothers me about Vikram,
Mm-hmm.
which I find, and I also find it very fascinating,
Mm-hmm.
is that Vikram is literally like the phrase of like it took a village
Yeah.
to make him succeed, and he had to be like, it's almost like he had to be the most moldable version of himself. He's almost like primed, ready for opportunity, and then all of these factors have to work,
Yeah.
and then you succeed.
Yeah.
Right? It's like this is what it takes for an outsider to enter this world and completely make it, which I find to be, it is both, like I said, like I remember like watching that film, watching that intro, you think, oh man, that's such a beautiful love letter, right, to Bollywood, to films. And then you realize, oh, it's also a symbol of like, look at all these people, and then Vikram has to be right there, and that's when he'll make it,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And let's look at where we find him when the film begins, right? The film begins firstly with Sona. She's in this world. She's been here for 3 years, struggling, holding on to that one dream of hers, or the promise that Satish Chaudhary has made him, while she's doing all the, dead sister ki saheli type of roles in the film. He comes and, he has his friend over here who's been doing theater, who's been kind of trying to make it into this world. And where do we find Vikram Jaisingh in the movie? We find him in Nandakishore Acting School, where he is kind of going through the entire training montage of becoming a Bollywood hero. Because Hollywood में तो एक्टर कोई भी बन सकता है, but Bollywood का हीरो एक्शन भी करता है, ड्रामा भी करता है, कॉमेडी भी करता है. So he's like doing, sort of horse riding, he's like doing action, and he's kind of going through that complete training. But he knows somewhere, like, the first time when he meets Sona, he is playing chess with Abhi, and Abhi kind of, sort of trying to, kind of make a pass at Sona, kind of tells, hey Sona, ye Vikram, actor banne aaya hai, quote unquote, in inverted commas, actor. And Sona tells him, aap Qatar mein hai, wait kare. We know right then, this is not that guy, right? This guy is not going to wait in line for it. He's going to make his chances, and he's someone who's going to look beyond talent. That it's not just talent which takes it to make it in the industry. He's going to explore and take his shots. And so, yeah, how do you find him in that particular, from that perspective and lens?
I think like what you said about talent, right? He knows that it's not just about talent. I think that's what I find interesting about Vikram, is that he knows, he's dialed in to what this industry is. And in that moment, he's like, okay, what do I have? What are the like kind of resources around me, and how do I succeed? Right. So Vikram isn't bothered with this idea of like being a great actor. Right. In fact, he kind of, I think he, in that Nand Kishore school moment where, he does perform, you see him for the first time, right? he is given a note that तुम बहुत underplay कर रहे हो.
Yeah.
Which is like, you know that thing of like, oh, he's being a good actor. Vikram is aware that acting is not the important part of this, right? Even in Nand Kishore acting school, when like he gives that performance, and the implication is that he's a good actor in that moment, because he's been told you underplayed a lot, which is kind of that hallmark of like like a non-mainstream actor, kind of like not playing to the gallery sort of thing. So he's giving that level of performance. But I think as soon as he gets that note, and this is my understanding of Vikram, is he will completely change how he acts from that point on. He will imbibe that completely. I actually had another question as you were talking about this Sona thing, which I find really interesting, right? Sona comes in and she hitches her wagon to Satish Chaudhary.
Yeah.
Right. What happens if Vikram gets a hook like Satish Chaudhary? What if he gets that leg up in that way? What happens then? Does he kind of hang his hat on that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, not to hang his hat, but he extracts that, he juices that resource, right? He, in many ways, is like a very good salesman. Like, he knows what the other person, the ticking points of the other person, or what makes this person tick, what are his moves, so he will work it up in such a manner that he will almost make Satish Chaudhary believe that it is imperative to cast him, and thereby get his shot, rather than, pushing for him, like, from the outside, sir, please give me a chance, or like, what about you have told me, and all of that. The way in which simplistic, like, rather, or very sincere that Sona is being, this guy will not take that route, I think. He will
do you think he waits 3 years as more? Like, does he wait 3 years?
Absolutely
to
not.
do the Pyar Hua Tumse, I think that's the film. Like, does he wait for Lovebirds to get finished, like the John Bipasha film? Or does he go, hey, because I think he will try to get his way into Lovebirds as well. Like, or he won't wait. He'll do other movies. I think he won't be like, if this movie doesn't work, what am I going to do? He won't invest that much into a future because he is a man of the present a little bit. Like, that's one of the beautiful things about him, right? I think like he is someone that is very much like, I have to be doing things right now in this moment and use each opportunity to its fullest. Instead of like, we'll see when that happens. Or reflecting, remember when I gave that great performance in theater in school? He's neither, right? He's like in the middle, very present.
Absolutely. Like, we will talk about this later on also, but his emotional sensitivity is so high that most probably in the first meeting itself, he will figure out, oh, Satish Chaudhary is not my guy. This guy is not going to get me anywhere. Correct. So he will not even indulge into milking that opportunity. If, for example, he finds out a way through Satish Chaudhary to Rolly, right? Because he's like his relative. He will figure out, like, I think that is the route which he will take. Like, he will from Satish Chaudhary go to what matters to Satish Chaudhary's Pinky Productions, which is named after his wife. And like kind of from there on make it to Juhi Chawla, impress Juhi Chawla, and from there on make it to like that's the alternate world or alternate reality of this movie. If, like, for example, if he doesn't come and 3 years and he's first meeting Satish Chaudhary, I think that is the path which he will find himself on. So which tells you a lot about the kind of character that he will look at every person as a stepping stone to the success, to the next step which he wants to get to. Like, nothing wrong with that per se. Like, in the sense, I don't know, it's a debatable thing where he kind of lets that kind of a thinking creep into his relationships.
I think it's like I have to stress this though, because I think I made it into a point where I'm like, Vikram will succeed no matter what. But I think it's important to acknowledge, with his friends, they don't have the privilege that he does, right? So like the reason when we're talking about the Satish Chaudhary angle, when I like, oh, he wouldn't do that and he would kind of hold out for other things and work towards other things, is because he could afford to do that, right? Look, his family is extremely wealthy, right? His dad has a store in Delhi. He's living with his Masi, Mohini Masi in Bandra. He doesn't have to worry about rent in Bombay, right? These are things that I think will inform his decision making, because he doesn't have to he will not follow the directive of someone like Satish, because he's like, no, I don't need to pay the bills only. So why would I take that small role that he's telling me to take? So I think that's also important to acknowledge. Like, a lot of these steps he can take because he has that foundation already. So he can make those decisions, which is sort of not a great look for, like, how do you make it? Oh, you have to be a little rich, But
No,
yeah.
absolutely. Like, that is in the worldview of this character or in the context of this film. That is a very valid point. Like, this character is coming from places of privilege. His cost of failure is like, even if he fails, he will have this world to fall back on. So, from a survival standpoint, it's not going to be much of a problem for him. Whereas, look at Shona. Like, she has almost abandoned her family to come here. If she doesn't make it, she has to go back. She has to deal with the shame of it. She will probably be married to a random guy, which she has to kind of almost give into that marriage,
Yeah.
where her identity will be completely kind of taken over and lost. And, there'll be no self, like, I don't know, we can go that far, but probably, it will not be a good case scenario for her. Similarly, like you rightly point out, like with this character, he doesn't have to worry about the adulting tasks in a city like Mumbai,
Yeah.
where apart from the job that you're doing, apart from the, sort of dreams that you're chasing, you have to also worry about the existential things like, oh, what about the rent? What about the food? What about, sort of getting from one place to the other, and all of the costs of general living are so high. So yeah, that's a very fair point. And that also kind of very interestingly drives into the language of this character. You can see his life philosophies are almost like that out of a self-help book, like write his chicken soup for the soul and like kind of stuff,
Yeah.
where he's giving the most influencer driven manifestation kind of quotes like, oh, this is what you need to do,
Yeah.
you need to kind of believe in yourself. Yeah, like let's not be judgmental about it. In his worldview, he's
Yeah.
being very sincere about it. Like he completely believes this. That's the beauty of the guy, is that he's here believing in this dream, but at the same time he's very present in every day. He's shooting his shots, he's making his opportunities. So I think that's a very valid point.
I mean, in some ways, he's like, it's a weird thing because he's an actor. He's trying to make it as an actor, but he is almost like performing a role in every situation. It's very interesting about Vikram. Like he's constantly acting. Like his best performance
Yeah.
is how he carries out his life.
Yeah.
Like he is never on his authentic self, right? Because but that is not an indictment necessarily of him. Like I'm
Yeah.
not looking at him from like a, wow, why are you pretending? Because I think we all do to some degree, right?
Yeah.
But I think like it is a look at a system that requires you to
Yeah.
be that way. Like it's a system that requires you to find the exact note to manipulate the right person to say the right thing. So it's almost like Vikram's like constantly acting.
Yeah. Which makes you like, that's a fantastic question. I think, what is his authentic self? And I would like kind of, ask all the people tuning in and listening to us and watching us, tell us in the comments, like, what do you think is his authentic self? Because as you watch the movie, he's always like, he's the Bruce Lee quote, right? Be water, my friend. Take the shape of the vessel that you are kind of getting into. So yeah, it's a very interesting question. And I think in comments, a lot of people will tell us about how do they relate to the Vikrams in their life, or if they find themselves as Vikram and all of that. So Karan, let's also talk about the environment Vikram finds himself in, right? Because people don't exist in a vacuum. They are also the byproducts of the system that they inhabit, the environments that they live in. One of my favorite quotes that I have like recently read in James Clear's Atomic Habits is that people don't rise to the level of their goals, they fall to the level of their systems. And which I find so true. Like so many times, in order to belong to a place, in order to find our find our own space and make our own identity, we kind of take the personality of the environment also, which imposes upon us, and which is so true in Vikram's case as well. Like look at the world he finds himself in, right? Like which is where everyone is trying to land their opportunity, and because they are trying to seek that opportunity, they are somewhere becoming opportunistic in nature. Like they don't in some ways see the moral dilemmas, or like the good and bad or the white and black in the context of that opportunity, and they're being opportunistic with it. I think I'm repeating that word quite a bit, but anyway, how do you see this world and like Vikram's place in it?
I do think like the word you're using opportunity because I think it is sort of informing this world a lot. And I look at like even just look at how you have friends in this system.
Yeah.
Like I find that really interesting how you are in a world where you are spending most of your time working on films or working towards films, and the people that you interact with become your friends, right? You don't really they're not making a lot of friendships outside of this world. And within that, the friends that you make are people vying for the same spot as you, are people that like, so you're constantly in competition with people. This is the world. You're
Yeah.
constantly in competition with people that you're also now going to go hang out with and chill and maybe reveal your deepest secrets to and all of that stuff, right? So you know how we're talking about like how Vikram is a product of a system and he is never truly revealing himself to people, right? But I think that is because look at this world like that he's in. Look at what he sees around him that succeeds. Because what he's seeing is like, oh, okay, so either you're, you know, the kid of like a big star, or you are, you know, Zafar Khan, who is an established name. Yeah. If you are not these things, if you are someone else, then you are everything that you're given. No, you have to, if you're given an inch, you have to take the whole hand. Like it feels like that. Like you have to like make the most of this. So that opportunism comes from that, right? That knowing that this is that word. Like even if what I find really interesting is like Sona's dancer assistant dance friend, right? Who's kind of like working on the set of Dil Ki Aag. She is, her interactions with Sona, ek to there's a lot of jibes thrown. They're best friends. And they're constantly calling out each other on like, oh, you wait for your Satish Chaudhary film. And like she's like, oh, I'll make it. You noticed how the director was asking me for instructions with the dance. And not my boss. So she's constantly vying for that spot, right? This is the world. So Vikram knows that. And he is a product of that. That's why he is who he is, because he knows that he can never bear himself to this fully. And he has to take every single opportunity he gets to the fullest.
And I think that's such a brilliant point. Like, you know, Vikram is looking at vulnerability as almost a sign of weakness, you know, giving his own information away because he himself is cashing in on the information which people give and
that's
given
a
to him.
great point,
So I think that's so bang on. And let us also kind of, because in the context of this film plays so much on the idea of destiny. Destiny versus, you know, sort of say, okay, free will, or how do you make it yourself? Because the night when she's, you know, Shona's world crashes onto her, you know, she learns that Satish Chaudhary has rejected her. She tells Vikram that, oh, I think mere kismat mein hi nahi likha hai. You know, I don't think so, it's in my destiny. And he says, you know, destiny is the word for people who don't know how to make it for themselves in their life. You know, that's the word of Vikram's. But let us now deconstruct or like follow the path of how he lands his chance. How does his photo gets into Romy Rolly Productions? So let's talk about that.
So what I find really interesting about the timing of like this, and I think it is Zoya looking at you going like, okay, this is what he's saying. Because he says to Sona, success and failure are choices we make. Right? And he keeps talking about the idea of like, there's no destiny. So when he says success and failure are choices we make, the very next scene, an actor on a Karan Johar film gets injured, Aman, right? He hurts his foot. He breaks his foot, right?
That's like so sad, man.
And that's a great Hrithik Roshan scene where he is not even pretending to be sad about that. There's no moment of like, oh, that poor guy. You know, there's no empathy that he's like, oh my God, this is his chance. And that takes away Zafar Khan, Hrithik Roshan, from the Romy Rolly film. And it opens up an opportunity there. So that sort of domino effect begins at that point, right? And because a big star has now left, the producers, the financiers of this film have now decided they're like, we can't be a part of this anymore. Even though they said that script is the most important thing, script is property, all of those things. But, you know, they back out, and then, you know, it puts Nina Walia.
She's the boss.
Nina's the boss, man.
Nina's the boss.
Nina's the boss. So Nina's the boss now. And the interesting thing about that is why Nina being the boss is important. And this is great. There are so many things happening at once here. That it's insane that Vikram can just say it, right? That's what we're trying to highlight.
It's almost like, you know, like in many ways, the world is conspiring to give him this shot. Because if you move a little bit before that, you know, there's this grandfather clock moment. Which happens, right? Like this friend of Abhi, who's been with Abhi, hung out him for the longest time. Like they are hanging out one day and he just talks about, you know, Mahesh Bhatt ke set pe, you know, Imran Hashmi has to go to New Zealand and then we just need to, for this particular day, get all the like things that we need. And one of them is the grandfather clock. Right? He asks him, and like Abhi is also there present. Abhi doesn't know what to do about it. But Vikram sees that as his opportunity to, kind of do something for Sameer, which then, in Vikram's head he's making a favor in his bank. So Sameer at some point of time will owe him something or like that, or maybe he'll get to be on the set of Mahesh Bhatt set, right? And when he walks in onto the set, also he says, Mahesh Bhatt hai kya yahan pe? And like they're like, oh, no, he's not.
Imran Hashmi ka kissing scene chal raha hai.
But that gets him into the premiere of Pyar Hua Tumse, like, the Akshay Khanna and Rani Mukherjee starrer Pyar Hua Tumse, like iconic film, right?
Yeah.
But he's now into a world where he's seeing all the actors around him. Like he sees Dia Mirza in a bar next to, like, standing next to him, and he says he's not afraid of, like, she's not out of my league. He's making his shots. He's into the space. But this is where his another chance opens up, where he sees, Nikki Walia. And he says, I have to go and talk to Nikki Walia. But his friend says, but like, look at the wall in front. Can't you see her mother, along with him? And he says, it's okay. He knows his way around. And like, he knows that to make his way to Nikki Walia, he has to go through Nina Walia. And he impresses, which plays a very pivotal role in the context of his and Nina Walia's connection, right? Like the way he kind of charms her and tells her the exact thing she wants to hear. An aging star at that point of time wants just validation.
Yeah, she just wants to hear that, hey, you're still relevant. Look, your daughter's... It's an interesting time, right?
Yeah.
Her daughter's getting launched.
Yeah.
But he tells her, like, no, but you are still amazing.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what that reminds me of? You know what Nina Walia reminds me of? She reminds me of Moira Rose.
From
Schitt's Creek. Take 1,000 naked pictures of yourself, like that kind of thing.
Like a darker... Moira Rose.
It's a different context, different environment. But she, in many ways, this idea of being still that, once upon a time, this actress that you were, that entire country desired, and now they don't anymore. But this young boy walking up and telling to you, hey, you know what? You're still the most beautiful woman in the room.
Yeah. So she remembers that. Yeah. But I think that's important. So that is enough for like that impression that he leaves on Nina Walia, right?
Yeah.
But how do his pictures getting to the Romy Rolly Productions is a task in itself, right?
Yep.
And so he's taking these headshots, and Sona is the one that's cast in a film, right? That's her introduction, is that Sona is going to get a film at the end of this. And on the day that she thinks that she's going to succeed, right? She gets rejected by Satish Chaudhary.
Yeah.
And Satish Chaudhary says that, you can't be in this film.
Brutal.
It's rough. Yeah. He says that, you are not a model, you're not a pageant winner, this is who people want, all of that. He destroys her. And the timing of it is important too, right? It's not that he just says something. His wife walks in a moment which would seem shady because, she's in his vanity van. She's like crying.
Yeah.
And, Shiva Chadda's character walks in, Pinky.
Yeah.
Right. And has that moment of like, what's happening here? And, Konkana kind of looks out for, Sona looks out for the wife in many ways, because she's like, she understands how awkward that must be for her. So she says, oh, I'm just here to give pictures of my cousin.
Yeah.
And that's how the pictures of, Vikram appear in front of at least Satish.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's the other element. See, that it's also like people's insecurities, right?
Yeah.
It's also like in that moment, Pinky has the insecurity. Like she has that moment of like, is my husband cheating on me?
Yeah. I love that moment. Like, Pinky from Pinky Productions. I was just thinking it's fascinating why Satish Chaudhary has made his production company's name as Pinky Productions. Because of the set, it sounds like such a, sort of tacky name. I don't know what kind of films they make, but you realize it's his wife's name. Who is his wife? His wife is the younger sister of, Juhi Chawla, who's the wife of Romy Rolly, like a major producer. So Satish Chaudhary probably is a guy, again in this world, who's married, Pinky, because it can lead him to the connections. It can lead him to the big producer.
Again, another sort of like opportunity thing that we're talking about.
And my, like favorite segment in this chance bit of Vikram is the kitty party, right? Where it's kitty party between Juhi Chawla and Shiva Chadda and all the other like ladies who are hanging out. And these ladies are hanging out and they are kind of making fun of Shiva Chadda. They are kind of mocking her. And now she needs to, so she needs to say into this world between her brother, like, between her sister, her brother-in-law and her husband, that I also matter in this world. I also can do something. And so when her brother-in-law is struggling for casting a actor, she takes this photo which she has got and she says, bhaiya, maine bhi, like,
Yeah, she takes
I've
the,
also bought. So
but
it's
I
a
think it's
beautiful
important
moment.
also, right? Like why she gets the pictures in her hands is
Yeah.
because Satish is feeling guilty about what his wife just saw.
Yeah.
So in order to placate her, he's like, hey, what do you, because he wants to put her in a position of authority in that moment. So she forgets what just happened.
Yeah.
So he puts these pictures saying, what do you think? Your decision's always right.
Yeah.
And it makes her feel like, oh yeah, my decision is always right. And so she goes with those pictures to the office. And then they're there, because it is that family connection, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
There's still that family network where like, okay, she's got the pictures. So let's take a look at it.
Yeah.
And that's how like Vikram
And
gets
that's
the
how his
audition.
photo lands, and that's how he gets into an audition, and like, then he's got the chance. Now it is up to him. Now he takes his shots. He's smart enough to know that his charm also has to work over, which later on like connects with Juhi Chawla and like connects with, Nina Wali also when they're watching the audition tape, right?
Yeah.
Which is so funny on one level because we have Rishi Kapoor, who's like the patriarch in the conversation. He's saying, oh, but look at Kunal, uske muscle dekho. He's like such a, like, he's pointing out all the like kind of the male gaze in that conversation.
It's very erotic.
Yeah,
it's very like, oh, look at his.
There's this quote about how popular culture is very homoerotic in nature. It's the longest quote. You can go look it up. But but in that context, you look at the like it's because it's Zoya Akhtar and like this beautiful layered film. You get to see at the female gaze as well. Like you get to see, okay, what Juhi Chawla is looking for, because from the entire table, Juhi Chawla is the person who doesn't know this guy. Nina Walia is calling, I remember him. He said something to me. Juhi Chawla has never met him.
Yeah.
She's just kind of like, validating him based on the audition tape. And she says, I like this guy. He's charming, and that kind of gets him the final role. And that's, such a kind of nuanced take into that whole scene. I find it very funny.
But also the funniest bit about that is that Rishi Kapoor can't buy a win in the sense that he can never, everything he says goes against him. So like he wanted Zafar on the film.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. And he says, no, it's, it's not about what the script demands as a new star. And he doesn't pick Vikram. He wants Kunal, doesn't get Kunal. He wants those producers. The producers also abandon him. Those financiers, they abandon him.
Yeah.
And he's left with it. Then he gets, and Dimple Kapadia gets in the position of authority.
Yeah.
He wants to pay Farhan 50,000 rupees. And, with the help of, Nina Walia, he's able to get it to 5 lakhs.
5 lakh. Yeah.
So there's all these, like, Rishi Kapoor is such an interesting character because, like, he never wins. He's always trying to manipulate people.
Yeah.
But he eventually wins because the film does well, right?
Yeah. He's always wrong about everything, but he ends up, like,
the worst instincts.
Benefiting the most. Top of the food chain kind of a thing, right, for the person. But for me, Rishi Kapoor's character is so interesting because it's so close to what Vikram also is. Like how Romy Rowley and Vikram are almost like, in terms of, look at how they are kind of always, I find the emotional sensitivity of both of them to be very high because they know what to say to the other person. Like when they're having the conversation with them or when they're having a transaction with them. Like you see every scene that Rishi Kapoor is in, or every time he is in a situation where he's like kind of dealing with a rough hand, he converts that into his own narrative. And he there's this whole, is he telling you the truth or is he blatantly lying to the other person? I don't know. You tell us in the comments.
Yeah, because I think he believes in himself.
Which is so like Vikram, like, when he's, sort of twisting the story and telling that, he's almost like, okay, you know what? This is how I'm going to tell the story. And like, I'm going to tell it in the context of what the other person wants to hear. And this is how I've gotten forward in my life and made it to the top of the food chain.
Yeah.
Vikram is in the context of emotional sensitivity so much similar to Romy Rowley in that film, because you look at, how he manipulates Kunal in that scene just before they are like the 2 final shortlists into that audition. And he says, where he gets, like, we were talking about this, where does he give him that feedback about, oh, you need to be, confident and, you need to sort of project your personality more. Like, you need to be slightly over aggressive. We were thinking that he's smart enough to read the script and kind of talk about that. But on multiple watches, like, you realize, oh, it's because he's met Sanjay Kapoor the day before. And he's still, confidence acha hai, but overconfidence acha nahi lagta, and all that. And he's given that, he's listening in, he's dialed in, he's tuning in, which kind of makes me like, makes me think, okay, he's very aware, he's listening to the other people, but is he an empathetic person? What do you think about that?
That's an interesting question because, like, I think empathy, how do you define empathy, right? Because Vikram knows everything that people need to hear.
Yeah.
but it's serving him. And in the case of empathy, you kind of have to like meet people as they are and be there for them in the way that they need it.
Yeah.
You know, you understand a person and you're there for them. I think Vikram is like, I understand. Also, I'm going to use this to climb the ladder.
Yeah.
Or also, I'm going to tell you, in the case of Sona, I would say, I'm going to tell you what I think you should do.
Yeah.
You know, because in the case of Sona, sometimes it's not that he's trying to climb the ladder, but he's not looking at it from, oh, Sona just got rejected from this film, she's heartbroken.
Yeah.
He's like, yaar, ye destiny kya cheez hoti hai? You know, like he's suddenly like, oh, this is a great time for me. It would be a great time for him to like maybe just listen to her, right? Or be there for her. But no, that's not who he is. So I don't think he's empathetic. I think he is, he's very dialed into the feeling. Yeah. He knows how they're feeling. He knows what needs to be said for himself.
So, man, I find the empathy question for this character so interesting, right? Like, he is listening in, he is tuning in, he's paying attention, he's being present, he's taking in the information of the other person. But is empathy just kind of, listening to the other person, right? Or is it also going beyond that, like, sort of holding a space for themselves to be? Like, in the last kind of 7-8 years that like we have been traversing through social media, digital media and all of that, this word has been thrown around a lot, right? Empathy. And like as artists, we all often come across this word. And it always made me question, okay, what exactly is empathy, or how to empathy for this way, or how to empathy in life, right? And the best example, or like when I finally registered the moment was, in this show, which is a study of a civilization. I don't know if you have heard about it, like The Office.
Oh, it's an indie show. Very niche, no?
Yeah, very, very niche. Like, I don't know if we have any Office fans listening right now. But, in that, there is this one specific episode, which is, I think, about the bird funeral, which made me see exactly what empathy is. Like, so just to give you a little bit of context, or like if people don't exactly remember it, there is a point in the show where, outside the office, a bird dies. Oh, wait, no. Before that, what happens is Michael, who's the manager, like the boss of the company, his former boss dies in an accident. And throughout the show, Michael is going through this feeling of, oh, he's also died alone. Maybe that is also what will happen to me. I am going to die alone. And in that show, at some point, they find a bird outside who's also like kind of, suffered an accident and kind of is dead now. So Michael finds that bird, tries to retrieve him, but he's dead. And like Michael is like, oh, Michael starts associating in his own childish way. He's a very childlike / childish kind of a character. He associates himself with that bird. So yeah, man. So the other way to understand characters and people is like through the closest relationships that they have, right? And for Vikram, I feel in the movie, the two closest relationships that he has is one with his friend, Abhi. Like literally for whom, like, on the basis of whom he has moved from Delhi to, Mumbai. Ki, koi nahi to Abhi to hai. Like, look, Abhi is doing it. Maybe he's also kind of, following Abhi's example. Who's come, like, how he's the second mover, if you look at it in the Abhi's context.
Yeah.
Like how Abhi is the one who's first taken the plunge. He's been here for some time. And now Vikram is also like, oh, I also need to do, probably, we don't know. But Abhi is his one close relationship and the other one is Sona. So I think let's talk about that also a little bit. How do you see his and Abhi's relationship?
Yeah, now that you mentioned it, I'm almost thinking about like when Abhi moved.
Yeah.
What were the conversations that him and Vikram were having at the time? Like I'm almost looking at it like, what, that thing of a friend's already there, you're asking them for advice. You're like, which place do I stay in? Do you think this is a good spot?
Dreaming together.
That's sort of like, oh, we'll do this together. They grew up together.
Yep.
And it's almost like an example. Like I get to, if Abhi can do it, then I can definitely try. I do think there's like this strange... So later on in the film, Shah Rukh Khan, when he meets Shah Rukh Khan, Shah Rukh Khan says, be there, think of always be there for those people, or never forget those people who were there for you when you were nothing.
Yeah.
Right? And so there's a little bit of hesitance for me to fully accept Abhi in that role. Only because I think that there is a lot of jealousy when it comes to Abhi. They definitely get along well. You can tell that they have an exchange, like a banter. There's some sort of like,
right.
They have a repartee. Like, that line where basically, Farhan tells him, like Vikram tells him, "Tu itna boring kab se ho gaya yaar abhi?" He's like, college ke 3 mahine baad. Like they just know each other so well. But there is a jealousy in Abhi seeing Vikram rise, which I find really interesting because, yeah, he's been there for him. But at every point, he's telling Vikram, that, oh, you can't become an actor like this. You can't become an actor like this. Incidentally, those are the ways that Vikram does become an actor or does become a star.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting. Like, I don't know how you feel about like this dynamic of how much of Abhi's jealousy will discount the fact that they really are friends.
Interesting. But I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that line of Abhi which you said, like, college के 3 साल बाद reminds me of कॉलेज के गेट के इस तरफ हम जिंदगी को नचाते हैं और कॉलेज के गेट के उस तरफ जिंदगी हमको नचाती है. टिम लक लकते टिम लक लक, but anyway, I think, in the context of they have their insecurities with each other. They have made an entire journey together. Like, they have been childhood friends. They have grown together, dreamt together. And now that they are in this world competing almost against each other, does that mean that they are not as true friends? I don't know, man. I don't know if, I don't know how exactly can we evaluate the idea of true friendship in their context, right? Because I think both have work to do on themselves, right? Because both are getting ahead in life in their own manners and seeing the other person as, like in condescendingly, like, oh, this is an inferior way almost. So I feel the hope for both of them is to kind of work on themselves, and like kind of then be able to meet each other. Because we all have had friendships where, we come from like our childhood friends that we have. And for example, if you move in different cities, in different cultural contexts, and then, you see the politics of the country also dividing you almost go back to your friends and say, hey, you're not the same person I knew. Because you are still viewing them as the 16-year-old or 14-year-old that you used to hang out with, but they have now become their own person, and now maybe your philosophies or ideas of life don't match. But there is hope. Like, there is hope in, working on yourself and then being able to meet the other person halfway.
Yeah. I mean, look, a lot of Abhi's stuff is you can understand his jealousy or the insecurity and stuff. Because there's a moment later on when Vikram's made it. And, he's just getting like swarmed by these kids. And he's signing autographs and stuff. And Abhi looks at him. And I thought initially that it was maybe a moment of, oh, I think I've lost my friend. Because he's become so successful. He's going to become a star. He will get lost into that world. But I also think it is that should have been me. That could have been me. Because, like we discussed, both of them from Delhi kind of came in to make it and had the same tools, right? Abhi has the friend who can take him to premieres, who can make him meet Mahesh Bhatt, right? Abhi is the one that could have asked Sona out on a date. Right? But he never does. You can tell that he likes her, but he never asks her out. Abhi could have, had pictures of himself and given it to production houses and done those things. Maybe if he stepped out of his comfort zone and of like theater and all, which isn't wrong. But it's like, you got to try other things. And he doesn't.
So another important relationship in Vikram's life is that of Sona, right? I think this is the relationship where Vikram, who sees vulnerability as a weakness, gets to experience moments of vulnerability. He gets to be himself. Like we were talking about authenticity earlier, of what is his authentic self. And in conversations with Sona, in the moments when he's broken, in the moments when she's broken, he finds that acceptance and he finds that space to be himself. So I think, Sona's equation with him is a lot about that, like, experiencing the joy that, or like for the lack of a better word, sukoon brings into your life. But yeah, what do you think about his relationship with Sona, man?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We spoke about Abhi right before, and it leads into what works about about Sona's relationship. In Abhi's it doesn't, because there is this fight with Abhi where they just throw jabs at each other, right? And in that moment, when Vikram fully breaks down, I think he's able to be there, very like vulnerable, fully there with Sona. And I think that even before then, Sona and Vikram, I felt like their relationship was a bit rocky. There was a lot of like jokes and, like veiled sort of, oh, you should go back, aap Qatar mein ho, all of these things, because that's the environment again. But in that moment, he when he breaks down after Abhi is mean to him.
Yeah.
He says, that's my friend. He's supposed to know everything, and I was there for him when he needed me. All these things.
Yeah.
He's telling Sona this. This is full vulnerability, like you said,
Mhm.
right? And he is trusting this person to never exploit it.
Yeah.
And he then tells Sona that he loves her. So I
Yeah.
think that's a big deal for someone like Vikram.
Yeah.
And I think that's where their relationship sort of like really finds its peak, which is that they,
Yeah.
they are completely vulnerable, and Sona is vulnerable with him also. When she breaks down,
Yeah.
interestingly, when she gets rejected, she fully breaks down and tells him, "Oh, maybe it's just not for me. Maybe this is not." So that honesty is there in that relationship. Unfortunately, there's also like a low point.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's a moment where he cheats on her,
Yeah.
and I think that it's tricky to talk about. Look, it is the low point of the film for Vikram as a character, because a lot of other things I always felt up to that point, I was like, yeah, I think even I wouldn't you do this? Like, there is that justifiable thing of like, wouldn't you also do this? Wouldn't you also manipulate the screen test so that you get a leg up? He's not doing anything, that's immoral. He just had a conversation with him.
Yeah.
Right? That's still up to Kunal to make the right decision and not give an aggressive screen test, right?
Yeah.
So he's not done anything wrong there. But I think the cheating moment is where you can look at it and go, he crossed the
That was
line.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. So
But then like we have tried to understand that, right? Like, yeah, let's put it out. Like, it's an outright wrong thing. It's a horrible thing which he has done to her. There is no defending that. But like this show, like in this show, what we are also trying to understand is, okay, why did he do it? Like, why as a character, like in that particular journey, he did something like that. And you were telling me something about it, right?
I think that for Vikram, it's like he got this big film.
Yeah.
He got this moment where it's like you don't get an opportunity like this again. We've just explored how much it took for him to get this chance, even if he doesn't know all of it. So he gets the film, and that's fine. And we're thinking, he got the film, why does he have to do it?
Yeah.
But it's because he doesn't want anything to go wrong. So if in that moment when Nikki Walia shows up to his room, if he rejects her, then suddenly it's like, it's awkward on set. She's not giving her all. Who knows? Who knows what happens? Maybe she takes that rejection really badly. She leaves set. Suddenly there's an inconvenience. Suddenly there's controversy around, oh my God, things are not good on Dil Ki Aag. Suddenly there's rumors. Like, I'm not saying Vikram could foresee all of this, but instinctually this if you're in this environment. So I think he's like, hey, I'm just gonna do this so that my film goes completely smoothly and there's no hiccups. I'm not saying it's the right decision, but you can understand Vikram, knowing who he is, why he makes that decision.
Yeah. If he doesn't sleep with her, there is water all over Dil Ki Aag. Yeah.
Oh,
That's,
God. Oh, no.
But anyway, but I can see what you're talking about. But I was also like in my recent watch when I was watching it, and I felt, what this reminds me of? In Marriage Story, like, which is, a film by Noah Baumbach, which is like kind of almost biographical for him. Like, there is this scene where like Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, this couple who has been married for 10 years and now are having this extremely brutal fight where they are saying like, kind of shooting extreme harsh thoughts at each other. And at one point, Adam Driver tells her, when we got married, I was a hotshot director making my way upwards. And, see the number of people, I could have slept with a lot of people, right? I could have slept with a lot of women. And I'm like, so, similarly for Vikram, when he's at this position where, sort of, he's seeing this as his moment. He's seeing like he's finally made it, where actress walks up to his room and like, sort of almost seduces him. So he's like, he's in that moment thinking he will get away with it. He's almost in ways thinking that he's left Sona behind a little bit, and now he's moved into this new phase of life. So that was my reading of it in the second the recent viewing that I did. And yeah, man, but no denying, extremely like the lowest thing for Vikram to have done. But then there is this arc that for them, like there's this third act also, right, where he gets back to her towards the end of the film, and you have something on that for
what I thought of it that moment is, I think it is the inverse of a rom-com monologue. The way that it's set up,
Yeah.
It's like the hero, he has a realization. There's a mentor character who gives him advice. Someone that looks off into the distance and is like, oh man, I used to have a love of mine.
Yeah.
And then I didn't get her or whatever. And he has that moment. He has that moment with, like, in other mentor situations, it's probably the dad or like, your friend. In this case, it's Shah Rukh Khan. Shah Rukh Khan is telling you, hey, you can't forget those who were there for you.
Yeah.
So like he's fueled by this mentor character who is actual Shah Rukh Khan. And then he goes there and he's like, oh, he's running to the airport, Yeah. He might as well be. He's there. He's like, he's giving this big speech.
He showed up on her set.
And this is the thing, right? This is where I feel like he fails. Because I think on paper, it's like, he did the rom-com monologue. What's wrong? But I think where he fails is like, he doesn't do the callbacks. Look, what do you got to do in a rom-com monologue? People, if you're running to the airport, don't do that. But if you are, okay, and if you're going there, you have to have like callbacks to things in your relationship, You need to talk about how, early on in the movie, it's like, oh, the girl couldn't tie her shoelaces. And then you're like, I'll always tie your shoelaces. And then you're crying and she's crying. And it's all emotional because you, in that moment, acknowledged her presence in the relationship. I know it's cheesy. I know it's like contrived. I know it's a cliched trope.
Yeah.
But I think it works is because people feel seen.
Yeah.
That you heard them when they said, you talked about your insecurities.
Yeah.
And you reminded them of them, not in a bad way, but in a I'm going to be there for you way.
Yeah.
And Vikram with his like self-help bookness just comes up with the most generic, like, you truly know who I am and you're an anchor in my life. And obviously it's not going to work. It's the inverse of a rom-com monologue. And she's like, well, where am I in this? There's no agency. There's no callbacks.
Yeah.
I think she said there's no callbacks. What about my shoelaces? So I think that's where it fails. That's why it doesn't work.
What you're saying is there is a rom-com monologue cheat code.
There is one.
Like there's one. But it makes me think about the tragedy of Vikram in this context. Like the tragedy is that if he was coming to win over Sona, and he knew he was coming to do that, he would have been smart enough to know this rom-com cheat code. Like, he would have been smart enough to gauge, okay, this is what I need to say so that to win her over to my side. But what he does at that moment is he's being absolutely honest about it. Sadly for him, his honesty is not good enough, which is the beauty of this film. It's devastating.
The first time he's completely bare bones, like he is Vikram to someone.
Yeah.
In a moment where he needs something. Yeah. So he has been vulnerable with Sona. But so now he needs something from Sona. But instead of adopting that approach, he's like, I'm just going to be myself. And it like doesn't work.
Yeah.
Which proves do you think that after this Vikram regresses to being himself again then?
I don't know about that. But I think a lot of men, maybe us included, should be grateful to Zoya Akhtar for writing this moment.
Yeah.
Because, it just opens up a window inside of you. Oh, this is how you have been looking at the world and this is not enough. Do better.
The cheat code doesn't work.
The cheat code doesn't work.
Yeah.
I believe in communism, rom-communism, as Ted Lasso calls it. But
I thought you were going somewhere completely different with this episode.
But you have to root it in some reality, in some making space for everyone and sort of that is where you establish true connection. It's a very bell hooks thing, but that's another podcast. So, Karan, to understand Vikram, I also wanted to take in the look at, okay, what are the forces of nature which are kind of against him, right? Who's the antagonist in his life? Like, okay, if he's the hero, who's the villain in the story, right? And the more I thought about it in the context of this film, I realized like the writing was always on the wall. On which wall?
Oh no, what are you going to say?
It was the wall behind Nikki Walia. Like, Nina Walia's big sized image, which is there. There's so much of play with image in this film.
Yeah.
Like you always see from the beginning, this life-sized, larger than life-size, pictures of superstars. And even like Hrithik Roshan talking about, Zafar Khan thodi na hai. Zafar Khan is a image.
Yeah.
Right? So in the context of this guy also, like Vikram also, like it is the image that he's building for himself is becoming the problem, because it is that image which, for him, the most hurt and the lowest point again in the film is where, you know, Glitter, the article comes out, which titles him the user, you know, or his middle name is the user, and which kind of completely takes down, like a classical tabloid takedown piece, which is then done by that, right? So that like for him, the image becomes kind of an antagonist for himself in his life, right? Image is just like glitter, you know, all that glitters is not gold, you know.
Oh my God. No, I
And-
agree.
yeah.
I agree. The image thing is, so this is what I feel, right? He hates when someone almost shows him the mirror a little bit. If someone kind of, in the case of Glitter, it is obviously a takedown piece.
Yeah.
But if we notice throughout the film, what you're saying about the image being like that antagonist, it's more like if someone exposes the image. So
Yeah.
like the fight with Abhi also is him saying, you know, I don't take loans from my friends. I'll go back to Delhi with your dad in
Yeah.
the store. So these are things that he doesn't want to think about. These are not part of the image of the charming
Yeah.
guy that made it. You know, look at him. He's so smooth.
Yeah.
He says the right thing. He's cute. These are the less cute things about the image.
Yeah.
Right. And when these pieces are brought up, he doesn't like it.
Yeah.
He
So
doesn't enjoy it.
the pedestal that probably that he has built for himself,
Hmm.
if at any point of time someone takes him down from that, or like even, you know, takes that shot, that is when he's rattled. But in the context of the glitter piece, right, it's a very interesting thing. Like I just try to look at it culturally. I think I look at, oh, why do we need tabloid pieces which take down, you know, people who reach great heights, or like, you know, in the context of the tabloid piece, which, you know, what's the name of the friend? Tanveer is writing, right? He is kind of trying to, okay, this is a star which has established himself. Let me talk about how he made it up through the ladder, right? How he used everyone and kind of doing that. But there is a very, I think that piece comes from a very toxic place in the sense it proves, it goes to establish that he's guilty without proving him innocent. Like, you know, guilty before being proven innocent.
It's like
and
a
all that.
confirmation bias. They're looking
Yeah.
for something, they find it.
Yeah.
Wherever they find it, they'll publish that.
Exactly. And this film is anti-glitter. The story that Zoya Akhtar is telling us is a quiet exploration of, you know, oh, let's look at what all go into making of a star and how complex and nuanced and layered it is. There are moments when Vikram is sincere. There are moments when the whole life philosophy that he has built for himself also gets him forward, but that also leads to his own downfall, right? So I feel the best of cinema is like that, like which is a quiet exploration, which, you know, makes us put ourselves in the shoes of the character, right? And say, oh, what would have you done differently if
Yeah.
you were in the place of this guy? Would you have not taken that shot? Would you have not moved forward? I think that is the purpose of cinema.
It's in the conversation.
Yeah.
It is. And I think in some ways, if these pieces were a little more nuanced,
Yeah.
right, they would be, what the purpose is, I
Yeah.
think what it should be, is a documentation of that time.
Yeah.
Right? If we learn in the 1970s that when Amitabh Bachchan was making Zanjeer, this was happening.
Yeah.
Or this was, you know, what the world was at that time. I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
Right? That if I go back into that, I will get a snapshot of this is what that time was.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm looking at it from like 20 years from now. Someone reads about Vikram, and if it's a well-rounded article, it's actually great information.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know.
Which tells his story from all possible sides,
Yeah.
without, like as you're saying, journalism without bias, you know, without, you know, sort of taking any sides from the outset and kind of exploring that. Like this film is anti-glitter. I feel in many ways, if what we, like when I was thinking about what we are doing with this podcast, I said we are making an anti-glitter kind of a podcast where we are not going outside, okay, this is the guy who's like, you know, kind of guilty from the outset and a very bad person.
There's no label, right?
It
There's
like, okay, what are you going to do with that information? Like only in stories, when we try to really move past the headline and understand the character, that is when it can open a window inside us, which interestingly in this movie happens with Sona, right? You see what she has done from the breakup, from the hurt, you know, kind of even from the hurt that Vikram has caused him. She has taken the good parts of him into his life, into her life. And then that is propelling her to move forward and arrive at this new, larger expansion of life, like expanded view of life, right? So I feel that is a very interesting, like of Zoya Akhtar to write that moment also in the film, where Zoya Akhtar and Reema Kakti to write that moment where, you know, sort of they take this tabloid piece as an antagonist force in the context of the movie. So Karan, let us look at the larger debate which is happening in this film, or like the point which the writers Reema Kakti and Zoya Akhtar and Zoe Akhtar is her first debut filmmaker, was sort of trying to make. And it almost, like, if you look at the film, there is a overarching debate about destiny versus success, or what success means in worldly terms versus what is the idea of contentment that you arrive at by yourself. Like, in many ways in which this world, like, this story could be about any world, right? Like, not just about the Bollywood and like the Hindi film industry. So there is this thing about that, like, in terms of how people come to, like, there is another character which is Mumbai in this film, like, where it is a city of dreams, where so many people sort of come from different parts of India and perhaps different parts of world to make a life for themselves, come with a certain dream of achieving something. Maybe few of them arrive at that, and maybe so many of others, kind of a majority of the percentage of the population lives with the idea of making some meaning out of their lives, like, without not having achieved that dream. So I think that is like Sona versus like Vikram's story also, right?
Yeah, I mean, the idea of the film came from that debate, right? Which is that, Zoe Akhtar speaks about this in a Film Companion interview. She was talking about how, she was at a party and there were a bunch of actors and they were talking like negatively about another actor.
Okay.
Right? But the way that they were doing this, they were saying, oh, he's too content, this actor. They were like, oh, he can't succeed because he's too content. Which is also what Vikram says about Abhi in the film.
Yeah.
And Zoe Akhtar responded with like, but isn't that the whole point? Like, aren't we trying to be content? That's the whole human experience, right? And they were like, okay, no, that's not how this works. Because in their heads, I'm sure it's like, you have to be ambitious. And I think that, the success contentment debate is personified by Vikram and Sona.
Yeah.
Like, because Vikram's always chasing for like the next thing and the next thing. And I think Sona eventually arrives at this.
Yeah.
There's actually, I need to introduce this properly because I think I don't want to get too overboard with metaphors. I'm a little worried about just saying, hey, here's a metaphor. But I think with Vikram and Sona, there's a fridge in Sona's house that's not working. Okay. So Sona uses her neighbor's fridge.
Right.
Okay. This is what, and Vikram is like, why don't you just buy a new fridge? And she's like, no, this is okay. And Sona is also very empathetic of her neighbor who's charging her for using the fridge, which is like perfect encapsulation of Sona, I think.
Yeah.
So I think this fridge is a metaphor for their arcs in the film.
Yeah.
Because Vikram, when they go to a grocery store, and there's a fridge contest happening. Like, if you fill out a catchy caption for this fridge brand, you can get a free fridge.
Yeah.
Right?
No frost, no cost.
No frost, no cost.
Yeah.
And Vikram jumps at this opportunity. He's like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you capitalize on this opportunity that's presented to you? And Sona's like, I'm very happy how I am. Right? A lot of Sona's life is her hanging her hat and waiting. Right? She's like, hey, Satish Chaudhary's film's coming. I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need to. Vikram's like, no, but you need to seize this.
Yeah.
Even if, and the thing about it being a fridge contest is also, a lot of it is there's a lot of people that are going to attempt at this. Just like in Bollywood, like a lot of people are going to try to vie for the same spot, vie for the same fridge.
Yeah.
Vikram writes his caption.
Yeah.
Right? Also using written English, which him as the privileged boy that is living in Bandra currently is able to do and Sona's not.
Yeah.
Right? So he writes it. And the thing is, their journeys kind of, continue from that point.
Yeah.
And Vikram achieves all the success. What happens is, Sona, the fridge arrives at Sona's house, which means Vikram succeeded. Right? Vikram's caption totally won.
Yeah.
Just like Vikram won in this game of luck. Right? He gets selected. But Sona gets the fridge, because what happens is Sona gets the lesson from Vikram's success and the hollowness of that, the emptiness of that. The person that finds her own definition of success finally, after like two people in her life, Satish and Vikram, who she kind of was like, okay, I'll hang my hat on that, I'll make decisions based on what they're doing. But then the fridge arrives. She finally learns that what she wants is independence, actually, freedom from that. That is, and the respect that comes with it.
Yeah.
So that's her definition of success.
Totally, man. And whose photo is there on the fridge? Like, who's the brand ambassador?
It's Zafar Khan, man.
It's Hrithik Roshan.
Yeah.
Right, so like, the idea that they're chasing. So it's like beautifully, I think, designed, and it plays it wonderfully into the film. And there is this whole thing about, the idea of contentment versus success again, which we are talking, right? Like when we think of contentment, I think like the wrong notion with that is, we look at it as a very static thing. There's this old joke about how once a warrior or a prince or like some man, a working man comes to a place where he encounters another, lazy bum sitting on the sofa or sitting on the street somewhere. And he says, why don't you go and work? Why don't you make something out of your life? And the lazy bum said, oh, then what will happen? He says, then you will probably, get a job. You will probably get a family. So then what will happen? Then the, thing goes on and on. It like ultimately comes down to, oh, then because of all of this, you will be able to sit back and relax and enjoy your life. And the lazy bum says, but what am I doing right now? So it's an old joke which is played for the laughs, which is played for the idea of all of that. But I think the other way to look at that joke is like just going through that journey of, doing the work and getting the gratification, that can also lead you to contentment as it does to Sona. So Sona, in her ways, like I think the beautiful arc in this film is when Vikram tells her, success and failure are the choices which we make. And he tells her at the midpoint of the film.
Yeah.
And towards the end, she says, ab jaake, like now I have understood the meaning of these words. Which means like when they were talking at the midpoint, and this happens to us as an audience as well, by the way, when they're talking about it in the midpoint, in that context, we are looking at success and failure in the ways Vikram is looking at it.
Yeah.
And the ways Vikram is looking at it is not like less from his own eyes, but more in terms of how has the world defined this idea of a star or this idea of making it into the industry and all that. Whereas what Sona understands is that, she can make her own, she can give the word success her own meaning. She can choose her success and failure.
Yeah.
And that kind of, just it's a mind-blowing thing of how, sort of this film arrives at that.
Yeah. I mean, like, so that's an interesting conversation about, even the story that you said.
Yeah.
I don't know how, because there's always a balance of at what point are we being complacent and at what point are we not, that term of like being lazy, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we throw it around a lot.
Yeah.
But is it like at what point do you feel like, okay, now I'm in contentment?
Yeah.
Because the thing with success or like chasing this idea of success, especially with Vikram's lens, is that when you put everything into a milestone, when I do this, when I clear my exam, I'll be happy or I'll be successful. When you get there, you're not actually, it didn't fix anything. Right? Like the success doesn't fix whatever you're dealing with. Yeah. Like
you have to still work on yourself and arrive at, okay, how do I give that word? Like, what does that word really mean for me?
Yeah.
In the context of, and where do we know these ideas come from? Like, what is the nature versus nurture part of it at play? Like, what are the cultural experiences in my life which are shaping me look at this word in a different way? So as you grow into adult life, it's in your early 20s. This is why you're a little bit lost and all of that, because you're struggling with, oh, maybe this word doesn't mean for me what it means for others.
Yeah.
And then you are struggling to find a sense of belonging. You're almost feeling a little bit disassociated with that whole thing. And then kind of as you, like, if you go through your experiences like Sona has done in the movie, there is a hope of finding, meaning for yourself. And like, so for Vikram as well, right? Just because he's on this journey doesn't mean he will not find his contentment.
Yeah, I think it's just that he used it as, and clearly did, use it as, when my first film launches, then you see, I will now be finally happy and all of these things.
Yeah.
He that's what he did.
Yeah.
He did that to himself. If he had said, first film achhi chalegi, to theek hai. Like, agar, if it doesn't work, it's fine.
Yeah.
If he was like that about it, then it'd be different. But I think that also, like you're saying, like, you have to have those experiences first. And then you get there.
So I think it's only when you go through that journey yourself, like, versus having just the knowledge of it, like this those whole goodwill hunting thing that you might read 100 books, but actually living through the experience is when you will sort of truly register it. And what another thing that Vikram's thing reminds me of, like, there's nothing wrong in chasing that idea, right? It's like there's this in Fault in Our Stars, there is this quote which this character says to, the actor says to her, he says, I want to be loved widely and not deeply, So I think, like, in the case of a movie star, that is a case which happens, like, for sure, like, we don't know about the deeply bit, but they are kind of loved widely. And, you were talking about it the other day, like how Luck by Chance is a film which is,
Love
which is
deeply.
love deeply
Mm.
and maybe not widely, which is kind of sad. But yeah, but the other thing which reminds me, this idea of chasing a dream, right? Which might almost be an illusion.
Mm.
Is it a wrong thing, right? Or is it, what does it say about ourselves as human beings? So I
Yeah.
find like there is this piece which I kind of go back to time and again. Piece which I read from Amrita Pritam in this book, which was a series of exchanges of letters between Amrita Pritam and Imrose. And once when Amrita Pritam went to some conference somewhere, she heard this anecdote. She heard this, man say an experience, which she writes to him in this letter, which I'll just kind of read it out loud and then we can talk about it. She says, like she's narrating this man, which he was talking. He says, रेगिस्तान में हम धूप से चमकती हुई रेत को पानी समझकर भागते हैं, धोखा खाते हैं, तड़पते हैं, पर लोग कहते हैं रेत रेत है, पानी नहीं बन सकती। और कुछ सयाने लोग उस रेत को पानी समझने की गलती नहीं करते। वो लोग सयाने होंगे, लेकिन मैं कहता हूं जो रेत को पानी समझने की गलती नहीं करते, उनकी प्यास में ही कोई कमी होगी, उनके होठों पर वो शिद्दत नहीं होगी। Then she writes to Imrose, and who she calls Jeeti by like affection. She says, सच मेरी जीती, मुझे वो सयानापन नहीं चाहिए, मुझे अपनी प्यास मुबारक हो, चाहे सारी उम्र वो मुझे रेगिस्तान में भटकाती रहे. So Amrita Pritam is this like romantic poet in many ways, like a romantic philosopher in many ways, and she's talking about this idea which I feel makes so much sense. Like for me it makes a little sense for Vikram as well. Like if Vikram comes to the does his work after Sona's speech and tries to really understand his place in the context of the world and gains the awareness, he realizes that probably he's also chasing a dream, which is that he gains the awareness of it, which can get him probably to the next step for whatever it is, which in Shah Rukh Khan's words, which he talks about, till now your first film chose you, but now you are going to choose each film.
Yeah, I think he'll have more agency of that too, because the first film is a success, right? So he doesn't have to operate from a zone of desperation anymore. He can now kind of look at it from a zone of comfort, of stability, knowing that he has succeeded. So now the choices that he makes and now the success that he gets will not feel so empty. It will actually enrich his life. He is in control of that now. And I think that is the hope for Vikram.
So man, this film is filled with so many funny lines. What are the lines which you remember from this film?
I love Hrithik Roshan going, "Oh, he broke his leg." That's sad, man.
It's such a sardonic way he says it, right? भाई साहब स्क्रिप्ट तो देखिए, स्क्रिप्ट मतलब ये है फर्स्ट हाफ और ये है सेकंड हाफ. The way is just like that's your way of measuring the script, man.
हॉलीवुड में स्क्रिप्ट को प्रॉपर्टी कहते हैं. And he's like, यहाँ तो हम प्रॉपर्टी को ही प्रॉपर्टी कहते हैं.
ऋषि कपूर has the most iconic lines.
Actually, yeah, easily.
सुबह से इतने सारे चिंपांजी देखे, अब जाके असली टार्जन मिला है.
संजय कपूर shows up. He's like, भाई साहब जबलपुर की एडवांस में चाकू चल गए. एक आदमी का
मर्डर हो गया.
God bless.
God bless.